Hello and welcome to That's Not Spit, It's Condensation. I'm Ryan Beach, and today I am joined by a very good friend of mine, Dr. Jen Oliverio. I've been friends with Jen for many, many years, and her husband, Patrick. They've been out here to play with the Alabama Symphony. I played with them in the Fountain City Brass Band, and we've just been good friends for a long time. So I'm excited to be able to do this interview and kind of catch up with Jen. It's been a little while since we've chatted. For those of you that don't know, Jen is the professor of trumpet at Missouri Western State University in St. Joe, Missouri. And she also is principal cornet, or is it solo cornet technically, with Fountain City?
Principal cornet, yeah.
She plays the solos. She's been doing that for a number of years now and sounds beautiful on the cornet. And maybe we'll even talk a little bit about cornet usage and trumpet pedagogy, because I'm sure you have many, many thoughts about that. But before we get started, I just want to say thank you for, well, actually, I should say it now because it's worth saying, because we'll get to it in a little bit. But Jen has recently released a Etude book of short etudes for high brass and then high E flat and B flat. Can you tell me what the distinctions are here?
Sure. It was based on requests from people. Originally, it was just for trumpet. And I was like, this is going to be great. I'll release a trumpet book. And that's it. And then euphonium friends felt left out. And then all of those euphonium friends also double on tuba because jobs, gigs, and money. So it's in bass clef in C in the high and low versions, and B flat treble for, anyone can play it that's in a treble clef instrument, but B flat treble instrument.
Got it. So we're going to talk about that too, and I want to make sure that I mention that now, so you stick around for that, because I think it's a pretty interesting concept for an etude book. So before we dig into any of this, though, I just want to say thank you for giving me some of your time today and just being willing to chat and catch up. Well, last time Jen and I spoke, I don't even remember when that episode was. It could have been 1 year ago. It could have been 10, 15 years ago. I don't even know. But you had just gotten a job at Oakland University in Michigan, and you were really excited for that opportunity. And I know a lot has happened, so I feel like for me, it would be cool, and for those listening, to just kind of catch us up on what you've been up to and maybe even how things have evolved in your career and anything like that. And we'll just just catch me up.
Sure. So last time we talked, obviously I was living in Michigan. We were acclimating to a new state and a new area and trying to connect with the freelance market, but it was also definitely steeped in COVID time. So it was hard to make those connections, hard to build the village that you need as a musician and the village that you need, I think, as a parent and as a person. So after 2 years at Oakland, I decided to apply for a full-time tenure track position at Missouri Western. I worked there for 5 years as an adjunct instructor and had a lot of connections and a lot of friends on faculty, and also have a great community of people in the Kansas City area. So we made the decision as a family to move back to Kansas City. I have a lot of gratitude and appreciation for my time at Oakland and my colleagues there, but ultimately decided it was the best decision for us to make that move back to the Midwest.
Oh, okay. That's simpler than I thought.
Well, that got me to Missouri Western. I've been there since fall of 2022, full time. I have the trumpet studio. I teach our music history sequence of courses. I've done a lot of kind of administrative and supportive work in the department for like our accreditation process and stuff like that as well. And it's been great to get back into the community and performing and teaching locally. So,
yeah, and Kansas City is just an amazing city. I love that city. And you're also connected now very closely with Fountain City. I know you were traveling to still play with them. So what is that like to be back in Kansas City and playing with Fountain City as much as possible? I guess if anyone's not aware, Fountain City is a British-style brass band in Kansas City. It's been around for over 10 years now. I used to play with the group, as I mentioned, and it's an incredible experience. I'm just curious, what's it like to be able to be closely involved again?
It's great for a couple of reasons. One, I adore working with the Youth Academy. It's one of the most treasured things that I do professionally, working with the younger generation of students, exposing them to the British brass band style, playing really fun repertoire. So that has been one of the highlights for me. Additionally, it's great to be able to contribute more than just from a musicianship perspective. I've done grant writing for Fountain City, helped organize events, and helped support some of the initiatives that we're really passionate and interested in. So it's been great on all fronts to be able to contribute in a more meaningful way than just coming into play when we have concert cycles.
Sure, yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how playing that much cornet has affected your trumpet playing? And is it all positives, or are there any challenges switching between the two of them? And then maybe even how it has influenced your pedagogy. Do you have students playing on cornet regularly? Or I'm just curious for some of your thoughts related to this.
Absolutely. I find that it's a very symbiotic relationship. So the better I get at my cornet playing, it kind of translates into my trumpet playing. There's a lot of technical skill needed to play a lot of the music within the British brass band genre of pieces. And I find that only positively impacts my technique when playing trumpet. However, there's definitely a learning curve when going back and forth between the instruments. I find I get cozy on whatever instrument I'm playing. And so there's a little bit of an adjustment period between trumpet and cornet. Flugelhorn is less of an adjustment period. It's a little bit easier for me to transition back and forth. It feels a little bit more similar from a mouthpiece perspective. But I treasure and value the experiences that I have on both instruments pretty significantly. My students regularly play the cornet. So if it's a piece that's written by H.L. Clark, or, a traditional cornet piece, a lot of times we'll have them play it on cornet so they get the feel of that instrument. They can work through some of the nuance of the style, and they can get acclimated. For me, when I play cornet, it's as much getting my ear on board with how it sounds as it is getting my embouchure on board with how it feels.
Yeah. So this is one of the things I was going to ask, because I remember my very first time playing with Fountain City and playing a cornet with that sort of that V taper style mouthpiece, not a more trumpet like mouthpiece. And I mean, for me, you already mentioned it. I'm going to pose a question, but you already kind of spoke to it. Just like getting used to that sound, and that I'm not going to get the same kind of brilliance that I'm used to hearing. Plus, just some notes are not really agreeable on the cornet. Do you have any advice for if people are like, well, that sounds great, like if I want to help my technique and play pieces that are stylistically correct for playing on a cornet, like what advice do you have for people to maximize the amount of success and like sort of positive vibes, I suppose, that they get from playing the cornet?
I guess step one for me would be to embrace the humbling nature of first transitioning to the instrument. The second I switch to cornet and I haven't spent much time on, like if I am making a quick transition and I've spent a lot of time on trumpet versus cornet, I feel like my range is impacted and my endurance is impacted. And so those are the two things that make me feel like wounded and sensitive about my playing. And then I would say you have to want to sound like a cornet player when you switch instruments. So if I approach the cornet like I play the trumpet, it's like a firework. It would be like explosive and brilliant, and but it wouldn't have the intimacy in the sound that I've come to love and appreciate about playing the cornet. It's got like such warmth and sensitivity in it, and I find that's one of, you asked what some of the things are that transition between cornet and trumpet. For me, the sensitivity is something that I try to bring into my trumpet playing, and the strength is something that I try to bring into my cornet playing, so that everything kind of works together.
Yeah, nice. In terms of sound concept, who are
Mhm.
some cornet players that you try to listen to get yourself back? I'm sure at this stage you've got a really good idea of what you want to sound like, but when you were
Mhm.
trying to get that sound in your head, like who were people that you were listening to?
I spent a week in the summer. I was very fortunate. I received a research grant from a university, and I went to Wales, and I went to the International Brass Band Summer School, and like took lessons and worked with Richard Marshall and Tom Hutchinson, and who are, as cornet players, like some of the absolute greatest. that are currently living cornet players. They are phenomenal, and they were so kind and so giving with their time and their talents. And so I listen to them very frequently. Vibrato, color of sound, flexibility, all of those things are super impressive to me. And I would say that's a lot of what I take into my playing. I also really like David Dawes' cornet playing, really sensitive, impressive, technical playing. I studied for a time with David King. He has a beautiful cornet sound and is very intentional and particular about the style and way that you approach the instrument. And I also really enjoy performers like Kirstie Abbott's, and listening to flugelhorn players like Helen Williams are equally impactful. I think lyrical playing is sometimes an underrepresented, underappreciated area of trumpet playing. There's sometimes the appreciation for higher, faster, louder rather than really being able to spin a phrase. And so listening to people that specialize in that area of performance is impactful and meaningful for me.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I feel like it's changed as I've gotten older,
Mhm. Yeah.
How has this is a bit of a nerdy question, and you'll know why I'm asking this, but over the years you've been doing it, how has your practice changed? Like when you have to learn all these insane pieces and sort of maybe have endurance challenges, although I know you can pass things around on the front row
Mhm.
to help with some of that. Just how has your practice changed? Do you feel like it has changed, or did you just take the same kinds of strategies you were using as a trumpet player and applying them to this type of music? Or is it just did you develop a whole new way of thinking about things because of the demands that are placed on you from brass band music?
It's both for sure. I think also becoming a mom impacted my experience with practice. So I have to be very intentional and very smart about how I'm practicing, what I'm practicing, and when I'm practicing. With regards to like the really difficult technical practicing on the cornet, I have gotten a lot better at playing my instrument in the last 10 years, and I've gotten a lot better at practicing my instrument in the last 10 years. So I've figured out what practice strategies work for me. uh, when I go through a test piece or go through a piece, step one is big problems, step two is medium problems, and step three is putting it all back together. So, figuring out what the biggest issues are going to be for me as I go through a test piece, and I work on those. I call it the cheeseburger method, where you have to take tiny little bites so that it's digestible, so you don't feel overwhelmed, you don't feel like you can't process the information that you're receiving from the lick or the page or whatever you're working on.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine one of the biggest challenges about learning music like that is that it's also likely not an overnight process, right? It's like
Mm-mm.
my guess would be that you've learned that it is really like you're taking small bites and trusting that over a period of time it will come together rather than trying to sort of stress practice something all at once. Can you speak to that, and maybe not strategies specifically, but just the mindset you go in when you begin learning something that's that technical and that crazy? What kind of mindset do you have in the early days so that you don't sort of stress too much?
It's a twofold process for me, I think. I roll back the tempos, I do it slow, I do all of the things that teachers tell you to do and all the things that we value as players. And then sometimes I get to a point where I'm like, cool. Now I have to figure out how to take this technique and playing it so literally and make it possible at the tempo that's being asked of me. So there is some obviously learning what should physically be happening and what should technically be happening when I play. And then, okay, how do I build that into what's being expected from the composer? Because sometimes they're looking for shapes. They're not looking for um, the exact detail that they're requesting on the score. So it's a balance, and a lot of recording and reflecting and seeing what's being positively received in rehearsals and stuff can definitely help that.
Yeah, sure. And I know that I just remember my first time we played Masquerade. Like, I'll never forget this. It was 2013, I think.
Hmm.
And I remember the music was so insane compared to like whatever I had seen previously. And I remember asking, am I supposed to be playing all of these notes? And Ryan Sharp, the E flat player, and said he was like, "Well, you should try," like sort of acknowledging that, like exactly what you said, understanding what is the point of what's being written here can help save you from some of that insanity pulling your hair out. But then also when
Mhm.
you listen to like groups like Corey and they just nail everything anyway, it's also like kind of mind blowing to me.
Well, what they're doing too is really smart teamwork. And so if you get apart like a test piece or something like that, and you literally try to play everything and everyone literally tries to play everything, it's going to be kind of messy. So figuring out how can I work together with my stand partner or the rest of my section to create the composite of what the composer is requesting without me literally doing all of that work. But step one for me is usually figuring out, well, what can I physically play? And then what can we do together as partners on this?
Yeah, that's just so foreign for me, like
Yeah.
playing principal trumpet in an orchestra. It's like I have my part and I play my part, and I like don't really use assistants at all. So the idea of, well, you should play this to make it, it's just like that's so foreign to me. Was there a learning curve for you as solo cornet and learning how to pass that around, or did someone just kind of coach you on how to do it? How did you learn how to do it?
A little bit of both. I would say figuring out what your personal strengths are and putting your pride aside for a second and figuring out how can my strengths and the person's strengths next to me work together to make sure that this is the most positive experience for everybody. But yeah, like I wish I could play everything and I wish I could have the endurance to play everything, especially in the register that's written. But for me, it's like score study, figuring out when I'm doubling E flat soprano, when I'm um, when I'm not needed, when I'm not important, so that I can be proactively reserving some of my energy for the other things that do matter a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that's fascinating. I appreciate because, like I said, this is like
Yeah.
something I'm very bad at, and I actually feel like it is something I'm gonna have to learn eventually. So these types of conversations are helpful. You mentioned working with the Youth Academy. I know you've been doing that for a long time. I
Mhm.
would love for you to sort of share maybe first, just like what is it about the Youth Academy that draws you so much to it? And then what do you think? Like, I didn't grow up with a brass band as part of my youth. I doubt you did either. But now
Sure
you're
didn't.
seeing these sort of year after year, these kids come in and grow up with it. What do you think the effect is in terms of how they learn and how they develop skill as opposed to not having it? And what kind of asset is it for them?
One of the most obvious things that I see is the level of confidence that my students have. So there are some students in the youth academy that I have known for over a decade. They might be current university students of mine that have gone through the program, might be playing with the adult band now, but still participate in the youth academy or connected to that environment. And the confidence level of those students when they are given a new piece of music or when they work together with younger students, the mentorship, all of that stuff feeds in together and creates a really engaging and an exciting environment. Also, seeing students playing pieces that they never thought that they would, like, they didn't know their instrument was capable of that, is always thrilling for me. So I had a student that sat down in youth academy this semester, and I was filling in on flugelhorn, and he's looking at the music, and then he looks up at me and goes, I can't do that. And in my heart I'm like, you will. It was cool to see because in his band music he's never been asked to play with that technical expectation, and he didn't think he would be able to. But by the end of the season, we had their final performance at the US Masters 2 weeks ago, I think, and it was a very convincing performance. It was very impressive to see how much growth there was in that ensemble, especially from students that range from fifth grade all the way up to collegiate level students.
Yeah. I wasn't very involved with the group, so it's cool to
Mhm.
hear that's the perspective, and that's what they're getting. And I even think the element of competition is so cool. Like you don't get I remember my first competition with NABA as well, and it was like I'm just like this guy who doesn't care about anything, Well, whatever, I'm gonna play. But being a part of that competition, like some switch like flipped in me, and I was like totally into it. And I was
Oh, yeah.
totally like when we got second that year, I like hated everybody in the band that won. And obviously, it's kind of a funny way to say it, but like I got really into it. And so I
Mhm.
cared like deeply about how well we played and how like I remember there was a thing backstage when we played Breath of Souls. And Lee, the principal, solo euphonium, has this solo that it's so soft, and then I had as Repiano cornet a sort of counter melody to it, and I was playing it like too loud the whole time. And then we get to the performance, and I was backstage with Lee, and I said, "I don't care if no notes come out of my cornet. I'm gonna play this soft enough." And
Mhm.
that exactly like what you're saying. It's like you want to work hard for everybody else. You're like in this together, and I have to imagine like these types of experiences at that formative age are just like incredible to have.
Absolutely. There's I would say a pretty immense level of buy-in from the students. Like they come in and they're like, "Oh, this is just another extracurricular that I do," but it genuinely impacts them in a more significant way than a lot of other, things that I see them engage with, especially when we do the competitions and when we travel. Uh those long-standing lifelong friendships are formed. We've seen that with any number of students that started out. The Youth Academy's almost been around for 20 years. And so there's students that are in Fountain City now that started in the Youth Academy over a decade ago.
Wow, that's crazy.
Hmm.
How old is Fountain City? Is it 20 years old?
2001, 2002, something like that. I think it's 2002. It
Really?
didn't yeah, I don't think Fountain City competed for a couple of years, but I think it
Mm.
started as a local
So I
ensemble
must have
around
played
then.
from 2012 for the first time because I played the 10th anniversary concert, but
Hmm.
that would have had to have been in like 2013.
Yes, it was the spring of 2013 before Patrick and I joined because we joined the fall of
Oh,
2013.
okay. Yeah, I remember playing. Anyway, this is fun for me to get your perspective about this thing that
Yeah.
I used to do that I really, in many ways, miss doing. What are some recent experiences? It could be working with the Youth Academy or it could be your own. Some
Hmm.
like really, are there any like really memorable, whether performances or experiences that are like, this is like top five musical moment? Is there anything like that of recently? Could be good or bad, I
So
guess.
I'm gonna give you two, and one is gonna be like wholesome, maybe not musical, but just like feel good. So we played at the Worst Fest in Iowa,
Okay.
and it's a bratwurst festival, and
Sure.
you it's like Whit Friday style marches. So you go around in Iowa and you play at like a brewery and you play at a restaurant and then you play at the bratwurst festival. And it was like such a wholesome familial experience. It was very community based. It was so kind and so welcoming, and it was so much fun. It was one of the most fun performances I've had, just because it was a competition, but it was so light and the energy was so good. And my son was there for the whole thing, and
Mm,
he had a really good time. So a lot of people brought their families too, and so it just felt very warm and very comforting. And then as far as meaningful performance wise, I was really proud. The most recent Fountain City tour to the UK, I was really proud of how we performed. We had a lot on our plate. We played the gala concert, we played the actual competition, and did a number of other performances. And it was like over 2 hours of music. It was a lot.
wow.
And I played 40 hours of flugelhorn that week, but it was, yeah, I was in shape for something when I got done with that. But it was, yeah, a lot of fun.
Okay. Obviously, you're seeing my face right now.
Yeah,
Are
you
you
good?
flugelhorn right now?
No, I was last year though.
Okay, because I was like, she's solo cornet in Fountain City, and then I was like, hold on just a second. I do now remember you sitting next to Patrick, and I was like, is she? Anyway, I'm glad we got
No,
that.
you're good. I've moved around a whole bunch in the group. I think depending on the performance, depending on the competition, and depending on the availability of everybody, there's different needs for the ensemble.
Sure.
So, yeah, I sat flugelhorn last year and playing, principal and rep, switching through some different spots this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
that's fun for me to catch up on, and hopefully there's those listening, there's a lot of great stuff just about an experience like Fountain City. If you have the opportunity to play with a brass band, it's an amazing thing to be able to do. And, just thinking even about how that has influenced your trumpet performance and pedagogy, like there's all these different influences that can happen. I'd like to shift over to your Etude book that you just released.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the name of it. I should have done my research. It's like
you're good. 18 short Etudes.
I didn't think there was a fancy title, but what I know, the thing that's most memorable, and I'm sure this is what you wanted, is that each of the etudes are titled with a color. Yep. And not even just like red, yellow. It's like very descriptive, colors. And this is unusual. Usually you get etude number 1, etude number 2. So to put them with colors obviously gives a whole different vibe, or it's funny. I use that word a lot, and I'm self-conscious about using the word vibe now. So it gives a whole different feel when you think about it as crimson versus etude number 1. And I'm just curious to tell the story of how this book began and where you got the inspiration to use colors, and just kind of give us the picture of like how this came about.
Well, it didn't start with colors. It started with etude number 1. And so that's how they were in my Dorico on my iPad. And I would say it took me about 3 weeks to finish the entire project. I have been looking for some more creative outlets and some things that I can do that are less travel based. I love traveling and I love doing performances and clinics and stuff like that, but I also wanted to check out other areas of creativity. And so composing some light etudes for my students was one of the inspirations. I wanted to be able to give my students some sort of resource that can help them that's not copyrighted by someone else. So I can give it to them for free if they need it. And if accessing books and purchasing things is a barrier for them, I wanted, to try to take that barrier away. I initially decided that I wanted them to be short etudes because sometimes I do not have the attention span to make it through the entirety of a Charlier or a Biche etude. I have the utmost respect for them, and I have done all of them. But I wanted something that, felt challenging and was engaging, but also could be accomplished in a week for my students. They can sight read it during lessons and they can work on it over the week, and then they can move on to a new etude, and it feels fresh because of that.
Nice. 3 weeks seems fast.
Yeah.
Not that it's not quality. It's just, I would almost wonder, like, how much composition background do you have?
I've done a fair bit of arranging. And I think probably the most limiting factor for me was the platform that I was using. I started using Finale, and for me, it was a very time consuming process. I didn't have all of the shortcuts and all of that stuff. Using Dorico on my iPad, I'm just sitting in my sweatpants on my couch watching Netflix and writing etudes. Yeah. And it was a pretty intuitive process for me, and it's moved pretty quickly. And then I did all of the graphic design and stuff on Canva.
So you did that yourself too. Yeah, good for you. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Did Patrick help at all or give feedback?
Yes. No, it was interesting because I showed him like a bunch of options. He's commented on both the music and on the graphic design. For anyone who doesn't know my husband, he does photography, he does marketing, and so he would obviously have an opinion on all of those things. And I showed him the cover, which is Cotton Candy Unicorn Princess. And he was like, have you considered doing something a little more neutral? And I was like, no. And then I named all of the etudes colors. And part of the reason for that is I'm hoping to support my students in connecting more of a storyline to the etudes that they're doing. We get pieces that have exciting and engaging titles like Centennial Horizon or, those kinds of pieces. And they tell a story. And I think your etudes can tell a story as well. And so I used colors, and my son guessed the primary color. And then I found something on Sherwin-Williams paint chips. That's where I found all of the colors.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. So almost like kind of like a family project in a sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, mostly done by you though.
Yeah.
So I mean, 3 weeks. It's just like, yeah, like I said, 3 weeks. You must have just like felt inspired almost, right? To like it things.
Yeah.
Did you do multiple drafts? Or I mean, I'm assuming it's not the first draft, but did you find yourself like starting and stopping over, or was it just sort of like things just came out and you're like, that actually sounds pretty good?
I took about 30 minutes to an hour to write each one. And then sometimes I would change the key. I had a bunch of my students pilot them. So reading through them and seeing what they kind of stumbled over and, thought, is that what I want to challenge them on? Or do I want them to be working with something that's different? Is this about the key signature? Is this about the intervallic relationships? Is this, about something different? And so piloting them with my students was really helpful. Reading through them myself was humbling. And then figuring out, holistically, what do I want to accomplish with this book? So there's a ton of different time signatures, a ton of different key signatures. It's pretty rangy in each etude. So you get from the bottom of the horn. I don't go above C because I wanted horn players to also be able to play the treble clef version of the book. So it generally tops out around B or B flat. But yeah, I just wanted it to be like bite-sized etudes that had some substance to them.
Yeah. I mean, as I played through them, that's one of the things I noticed is that in my mind, when I think short, almost easy is like another word that comes, or
Mhm.
simple, like short, simple, like you can just read through it. But these are quite the opposite of that. Like they're definitely accessible, I would say. I don't think that they're like
Mhm.
beesh where it's like, all right, like, but at the same time, it's not something that I feel like I can sight read and then just like play it first time and be like done with it. It would take some like I got to learn these intervals. I got to figure out these fingerings, or even some of the articulations you use would take some time. So like what when you were writing this and envisioning the audience of people that would play, I mean, are you thinking this could be for literally anybody, or is it like a study aid for your students? Like kind of what was in your head for, I mean, I'm sure anybody can play them, but what was in your head when you were writing these and thinking about it?
Yeah, I almost work exclusively with undergraduate students at Missouri Western, and so I wanted it to be a challenge for any one of my students that goes there. I think they are fascinating students. First of all, I have a great studio, and I wanted it to be something that connects with them, so they want to practice them. Something that doesn't feel like it's fatiguing. I've been assigned etudes before where I'm like, this just never ends. This is a really long etude and it's unnecessarily difficult. And so I wanted it to feel like if it's difficult, but also satisfying to play. Um, it for me, it was interesting because I have a student that's been working on one of my etudes that's in 5/8 time, and he's a junior. He's a high school student, and I think the name of the etude is Emerald, and it's attainable for him, but he's never really played anything in 5/8 time. So working on some of the accents, working on some of the intervallic relationships, but also doing that on an asymmetrical time is a great challenge for him to have. And it's a challenge that I can really connect with too. I had some of the same issues just in a smaller percentage when I was working on that etude. So it's neat to see how the struggles are pretty universal, just in different degrees when you're working on them.
Yeah. So one of the things I like about the book, and I think it's because I know you're playing like decently well, is
Mhm.
it's just there's like a melody at all times. It's never like 5/8 and weird angular trumpet stuff. Like Biche can be this way. I've been working through that book for however many years. And a lot of
Mhm.
Biche, like once you get into it, you're like, okay, there is a little bit of a groove here. I'm kind of understanding, but a lot of it just feels like it's just hard for the sake of hard. I don't feel that way about the etudes that I played through in your book. There is a melody, there seems to be a purpose, and then there's a challenge there is a challenge that goes with that, but there is a musical sort of thing. My assumption is that was a goal of yours when doing it, but can you speak to that?
Absolutely. I wanted all of these etudes to be satisfying to play with intentional challenges. Intentional, obviously I'm a trumpet player, so intentional trumpet-based challenges. So whether that's finger challenges, whether that's alignment challenges between fingers and articulation, whether that's getting notes that are in the lower register in tune, like D flats and stuff like that. There's a lot of key signatures that maybe aren't ones that we touch base with all that often. And I wanted to make sure that the intent behind the etude was coming through while also still being a satisfying experience for the student or for the player.
Yeah, nice. Well, which ones are your favorites?
Great question.
And you can't say all of them.
No, I wouldn't say all of them. Some of them are my favorites to play, and some of them are my favorites to listen to. I have a soft spot for Olive. It's a mixed meter lyrical etude. I just think it's really beautiful, but weird. So it's like unconventional. And then I really liked. I like playing Lavender because it's very Cornet-y to me. It feels like very simple and very elegant and very beautiful. And then it's just really fun to play Amber.
Nice.
Because I love low notes. They're very fun for me to play. So,
Are there any etudes that you wrote that you're like, why did I write that? It's so hard, or it's really annoying to play. Is there any of those?
Yes, bronze. When I wrote it, it modulates from E flat major to B mixolydian, and goes from like this beautiful lyrical melody to a circus waltz. And I was like, why did that pop into my brain? I don't feel regret about it, but I just thought it was ridiculously silly. And so I was like, why? But I feel excited about it. But it's definitely, to me, the weirdest one that I have in the book.
Do you have any plans to record the book?
I have plans to have recordings of the book. Because I have it for multiple instruments, my intent is to have recordings of it, but not all be trumpet.
Oh, got it.
So some euphonium, some tuba, some trumpet. Yeah, those are my thoughts. I had a couple band directors reach out to me, and they wanted a excerpted etudes from the collection. So it's being edited right now because it takes a lot of brain power for me to do this, but there's 5 etudes that I've transposed into all concert band keys so that band directors can do an etude with every instrument in their band.
Like everyone plays it at the same time?
They can, yeah.
In unison?
In unison.
Okay.
So that they can all work on those concepts together, and they can talk about uniform technical issues or key issues or time issues. And so that's in the works right now. I'm calling it the band director bundle. So it's, but the 5 easiest etudes that were in the collection are a part of that.
It's an interesting idea, right? Because that's what etudes are for us as individual players, right? You have your fundamental exercises that are really basic, but then you get an etude that, in my mind, is like kind of halfway between a solo and fundamentals, where it's a little bit more musical in nature, but it's still kind of highlighting one or maybe 2 fundamental skills that you're trying to develop. It's kind of interesting to think about having that for an ensemble, which, as far as I've seen, are things like chorales or whatever, where you can work on pitch and intonation, but being able to talk about, other types of difficulties that ensembles would go through is a really interesting idea.
Yeah, especially since you see that with beginners or, people that are newer to their instruments. You see like the traditions of excellence or standards of excellence, like those beginner books that talk about technical issues on each of those instruments, but can be played in a vertically unison way throughout the band. That's like the first 2 or 3 years of students playing, and then they move on to concert band literature where everyone's playing different parts. But one of the big points that the directors made is that their tuba players or some of their low reed players are desperate for a melody because they never get that in their concert band music. So having this would be a great outlet for them to be able to do that.
Sure. This is amazing. And I mean, maybe I could nitpick and keep asking questions, but the really like the last question that comes to my mind, and I hope I'm going to phrase it in a funny way, but I hope you'll understand what I'm asking. And if not, I'll clarify and ask it the right way. But who do you think you are writing an etude book? What do you think qualifies you? Which I'm obviously saying it in a joking manner, but I just think I would love for you to speak to this because I think we as musicians can regularly put ourselves in, quote, our lane. And it's like, I perform, I don't write, or I don't do this. But clearly you've arranged, you now have composed, you're a performer, you're a teacher, like all these different hats. Like, how do you have, whether you could say the confidence or the whatever you want to say like, I'm going to write an etude book and I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to see what happens. Like, how do you, like, is there a perspective you have in life that takes you in that direction? I hope you understand the actual question I'm asking.
It's a great question. To be honest, I asked myself the same question when I was writing it. I was like, am I going to do anything with this, or am I going to be too scared? And it's a completely valid question. I think the thing that makes me qualified is the fact that I know my instrument. And so when I released the book, the intent was to showcase, the trumpet or the cornet or the flugelhorn or whatever instrument in that family in a beautiful lyrical way, but also in a way that's going to push the boundaries of what is technically possible. Not in a like super challenging, like obscure way, but in a way that is accessible, in a way that is enjoyable. So I know my instrument. I know what the nuances are of that instrument. And so for me, a lot of writing these etudes was about connecting with those issues and finding musical ways so that you can iron it out without hating yourself or hating the instrument, Mm-hmm. And the request to transpose it into other keys, came from other brass players that have similar concerns, similar issues, similar things that they want to connect with. So it's been really well received. I've sold 70 copies of the book so far.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I would say, too, based on not even just my opinion, but just having listened to you, you also did your due diligence, and mm-hmm. sharing it with your students. And you didn't just like write something first draft, throw it out there. You did your due diligence to have it sort of proofed and to try to see, could I make it a little bit better? But my perspective, not that you asked it, but it's also okay if you put something out there that like you worked really hard on and then it wasn't well received and you like learn from that experience and then your second etude book is way better. You know what I mean? There's so many examples of, especially in business, where someone has a product and they really think that's going to be the thing and then it's not, and then they pivot and they do another thing, and then like the fourth one of those is the one that hits and everybody knows them for that fourth version. Mm-hmm. Like, I just think to pigeonhole ourselves and to say, well, I don't know anything about that, so I'm not even going to mess around with it, sort of limits like not just the output we could have, and this is actually the last question, but it also limits who we can become in the process of chop wood, carry water, who we can become in the process. So like, I'm just curious, like I said, for me, I think this will be the last question, is just like, what did you learn about yourself, about the composition process, about your students, about music, about whatever? Like, what kinds of things do you feel like you learned that even if you didn't sell one book, you'd be like, I'm glad I did this project because I learned so much?
Yeah, absolutely. I spend a lot of time assigning music as a teacher, that works full time. I assign a lot of music to my students. I see what they're being assigned for like state solo and ensemble lists. And I was like, I think I can write something that's better for the trumpet. And it's no disrespect to the Getchell book or, some of those other books that are absolutely fine. And they do a great job of introducing students to their instrument. But, yeah, I don't know, just seeing what's out there, seeing what's regularly assigned to students, and then being interested in trying something new. And I didn't really obviously I wanted it to be successful, but if it wasn't, it was still a thing that I did that I can put on my tenure portfolio, you know. I still check the box of something new and something, and I think it's really important as teachers and as musicians and as performers to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, because I can't expect my students to do that if I'm not willing to do it myself, you know.
Yeah. Do you see future projects that have to do with composition? Like, did this give you an amount of confidence that, like, yeah, I could do this again if I wanted to?
Yeah. I have an almost complete duet book. There's 12 duets, and they are animal themed, and they are super cheesy, and I love them. And I actually think the composing is stronger in that book than it was in this one.
Yeah.
So I feel empowered to keep working on it and to keep trying. I think for me, my trajectory, I wanted to make sure that I felt good writing for a single instrument and then writing for two instruments in the same family. This etude book, or the duet book, is going to be interesting because I'm transposing it in all keys. So if you buy the book that goes with your instrument and you play with anyone that buys the book that goes with their instrument, they can be performed together.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
So
that's a great idea.
tuba and flute, or trumpet and horn, or whatever combination you want. There'll be, I think, 7 combination options, 7 different books and 7 different keys. But I think using that as a platform to move into maybe like a solo trumpet work for a recital or a trumpet ensemble or stuff like that. I love composing for my students. I like writing this stuff and trying it out. We've read through, I think, half of the duets in lessons with my students, and mixed responses on the sight reading of those duets, because like the etudes, they're pretty challenging, still short, but pretty challenging. But I'm really excited with how they sound.
That's amazing.
Thanks.
I'm asking these questions because people like you, people like Patrick, I find inspiring, you know. Like, if I think about Patrick and his trajectory, you know, during COVID, he started doing those like videos, putting it all together, and that led to this next thing, and that led to more video. And now he's like doing what he's doing at UMKC, which is amazing. And so I'll be so excited to see, like, 3 years from now, where will you be with like investing in these skills that could put you in a whole different set of conversations that you never would have had any idea you could have been a part of. You just decided, I'm going to go for it and like see what happens. And obviously what you're putting out is already very, very good. And so I'll just be so excited. You know, you're just going to be a testament to like, this is what happens when you just like try something and just try to do it really well.
Thank you. I'm also excited for it. I think it should be empowering for students and for teachers to try something new, start a dialogue with a new area of your professionalism or your creativity, and to just see what happens. Even if it's not something that sticks, it's still something that could be really meaningful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we didn't talk much about this because it wasn't sort of strictly related, but you did bring it up a couple of times too, that on top of juggling all of this stuff, you also have a child.
I do, yeah.
And so it's like an amazing, to me, and it's an amazing feat to be able to balance all these things and to show up and be present for all these things. And so I just want to say to you, you're inspiring to me, and I think it's amazing.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. You are also inspiring to me.
I just hope other people see you and they think, you know, Jen's paving this way, doing amazing things. Like, maybe I can too. Do you have any other thoughts that maybe you wanted to say that we didn't touch on here at the end?
Not particularly. I do want to say that one of the big inspirations for the Etude book being it's exclusively digital, I'm not offering physical copies, is because I wanted to make sure that it was affordable for students. And so if there are any students out there that are concerned that they can't afford it, to reach out to me, because I do want to make sure that resources are available to those that need them.
Well, how would someone reach out to you?
I have socials, so you can connect with me on Instagram. My university email address is on the Missouri Western website, so that could be a possibility. And then I'm also on Facebook, and I love to hear from people. So if you play any of the etudes, or if you hear any of them or anything like that, please feel free to connect.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been awesome. It's nice to catch up with you, and it's just, like I said, it's nice to to hear from you and like I said, be invigorated and inspired. So I appreciate your time. Thank you to Brandon Yoakum for his work on mastering this episode of the podcast. You can check out Brandon at epiphanyrecordingstudio.com. I want to thank Masa Otake for putting the video on YouTube together for this. Masa's great. And then most of all, I would like to thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy this episode, and we will see you in the next one.